Hello, and welcome to the Base, Big and Small Screens. This week, I would like to talk to you about Elementary, the first season, at least. Um, Now, Elementary is one of those shows that I heard about was coming, that CBS was going to be doing a Sherlock Holmes remake or a Sherlock Holmes show set in modern day. And there was a lot of interesting things and maybe a bit of controversy popping up regarding this because this came on the heels of the very successful BBC's Sherlock, another remake of Sherlock Holmes uh, set in modern day. This one in London, of course, by the BBC, starring Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch, which I had seen only 3 episodes in it, and I immensely enjoyed it. So when I heard about this and the fact that they were doing not only setting it in America, in New York, but that Dr. Watson was going to be played by Lucy Liu, a female version, Dr. Joan Watson, uh, I wasn't entirely sure what to think about that. Um, at first, I thought, this is a let's jump on the popularity bandwagon of BBC Sherlock and rake in some of that cash. Uh, I was a little cynical about that, um, especially with the Lucy Liu going to be Watson. I thought, oh, great, they're going to have them be a love interest, and it's going to be kind of weird and strange. Now, what I will say is this: I was wrong on the love interest because at least in the first season, there's no real um, there's no real chemistry or attraction between Johnny Lee Miller as Sherlock and Lucy Liu as Watson. Um, they're very much become friends, contemporaries, partners, but um, there's no real love interest budding. At least not in this season, and not in what I've seen of the second season either. There's been, I think, 2 more seasons beyond that I haven't had a chance to watch. So I don't know if that's developed. I hope it hasn't, because I liked what they've done. That they have them being friends rather than love interests. Because, I mean, that whole thing, that whole dynamic between Watson and uh, Sherlock is very much in that vein. They're supposed to be friends. To have them be romantically attracted to each other just because one of them happens to be a woman in this telling, it strikes me as a bit of lazy storytelling. So I'm glad they didn't do that. I'm also glad that it's not just a cash grab based off of the popularity of BBC Sherlock, because it doesn't seem to be. It's definitely its own thing, which I like. Um, the entire premise is basically that Sherlock, because of events that happened in his past, which we find out about, ends up becoming a drug addict and going through rehab, and then graduating from rehab and heading to, or being, he was in New York at the time, but he decided to get a consulting gig with the NYPD. And they have a captain or a lieutenant, I can't remember which, and another police officer that ends up working closely with Sherlock as he consults on murder cases, usually quite baffling ones, which are rather interesting. And there's a few callbacks to some of the old Sherlock Holmes stories in these, which I really like. But the fact that they're taking it on such a different tactic, uh, it's very much in the vein of being modernized in modern day. Sherlock has a father who's like super rich and never around. I haven't seen him yet, but that is like footing the bills and whatnot to let him go and run and do his own things. You end up meeting Mycroft in the second season, which is really interesting um, for what happens there. It's fascinating what they've done because they're not simply relying on the old stories. They're not playing off of the old tropes as much as you would think they would. They take things in a very different direction. Um, just as a show, if it didn't have the Sherlock brand, I guess you could say, if the main character wasn't named Sherlock and Lucy Liu's character wasn't named Watson, um, and the show wasn't calling back to Sherlock, this would be a damn fine detective show in its own right. If you just had this brilliant guy consulting, uh, and he goes and teams up with a former doctor uh, who becomes his friend. She's actually in it um, as his not exactly a sponsor, but she's there to babysit him to make sure he sticks to his rehab and doesn't relapse, at least in the beginning. And she tags along on mysteries and gets to enjoy solving them on her own. And then he starts training her as a protege. Um, so yeah, like if you didn't have the Sherlock brand, this would still be a very well written, damn fine detective show in its own right, which kind of sets it apart for me, which I liked. I liked it quite a bit. Um, Johnny Lee Miller, who I had last seen in Hackers, looking a lot younger, uh, is a delight. Um, quite quite good. I love his portrayal, uh, especially especially his portrayal as being a bit of an addict, uh, addicted. He's got the wonderful little scarf in here that I really like. Uh, just little tiny affectations to his character that are really quite good. Lucy Liu, love her acting. I've loved her in a dozen other shows that I've seen her in. I love her in this one as well. She definitely plays a very down to earth, no nonsense type. Um, who is kind of getting caught up in Sherlock's world. And having the two of them together, they have good chemistry as friends on screen, and it's amazing to watch. Simply amazing. So if you haven't checked out Elementary, um, because you thought, oh, big deal, it's another Sherlock thing, if you resisted checking it out, give it a shot. See if you can track it down on one of the streaming services. I'm not sure if it's on Netflix or not. Um, if it is, I'll double check and pop a little yes or no up here, and it'll go yes, yes, or no, no. Uh, if it is, then you know. If not, you might be able to find it somewhere else. You might even be able to find it at a used DVD store if you can find it, or possibly for cheap, brand new. It's fairly old right now. So yeah, definitely, definitely a good idea to check this out if you haven't been. If you like detective shows, if you like uh, police procedurals in any shape or form, this might be up your alley. So give it a check out. Uh, as always, if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap as well if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of when I do new videos. Usually try to get at least one video a week, if not more. And throw a comment in the comment section. Um, if you've seen Elementary, or if you've seen any other shows similar to Elementary, any other crime dramas you think I might be interested in, toss me a little note in the comment section. I'd love to get a discussion with people. Love to hear it from people. So please do all that. And until next time, check out Elementary, starring Johnny Lee Miller and Lucy Liu. You might like it. And I'll see you next time.